Janice was an absolute passionate woman. She was ferocious, and she was a huge advocate for equality in other women. So my One Woman Show Rare that she has not seen but saw it on Facebook, she has told a promoter in Brighton to program it, and it's going to be in the UK next year, because Janice, literally, as her body was giving away on her, was ensuring that other women were being booked around the world. An extraordinary woman. So, in the living memory of Janice Claxton, we have set up the Bold Lecture, and we've invited Claire Hicks to give said inaugural Bold Lecture. Give it up.
I said earlier to Liz, what did I say I was talking about? I might change my mind. I've written this lecture about 4 times, but to be honest, in Vicky Van Hook fashion, I haven't written a word. And so I am going to channel that fearlessness that Marilyn asked us to, and I'm just going to do this. And it's not because I don't think this is important, I think it's because it is important. And we've heard from so many amazing people already this morning, amazing women, and I know also in the previous day, which I wasn't able to be here for. So I also think it's important to talk, but also to understand that we're listening in the room as well. I have a series of slides. They speak to what I'm talking about, but I also speak to what they're talking about, but we're not saying the same thing. If I get confused, or you find me boring, and there isn't a physical impairment that is stopping you from doing that, please look at them. So, I want to start by acknowledging that there is a reason why we have an acknowledgement at the start of these kinds of talks. We want to be sure that we understand whose land we are on, but another part of the acknowledgement is about recognising the learning that comes from the peoples whose land it is, the importance of elders within those communities, and the importance of custodianship. And I think that's really important as we go forward to understand that, because what many of us are doing, and particularly the senior women within our community, our dance community, is holding that custodianship. And I think that's something that we don't often recognise. Certainly, there is a sense of holding that, imparting that, nurturing it, which is often undervalued. So I think it's important in acknowledging country to acknowledge that learning and that leadership. So I was thinking about the kind of narrative that is associated with being a woman in this country and others, and in the issues that women face. The first slide mentioned 84.5. That's the average life expectancy of Australian women. Who knew? I was like, that can't be right. Where does that come from? And it's interesting, if you look at particular communities within the country, that goes right down. I probably don't have to tell you which communities those are. But in terms of the things that might be prevailing upon us as a community, there is a certain narrative that I think probably we are all very aware of. And it speaks to the kinds of things that are coming up behind my head: violence against women, sexual harassment, and women's health, things about what is it that are the barriers to us reaching equality within this community. The work-life balance is something that is often spoken about, both in terms of being productive and being reproductive. And I talk about that because I think there is something about the way in which our society treats women as the bearers of children, as opposed to how we are treated as the bearers of culture or the creation of other kinds of product. We give a certain value to one, and we don't necessarily give a value to the other. We privilege one, and we deprivilege the other. And I think when we look at the statistics that are around, number of women on boards of, the 200 listed ASX companies, or we look at the average full-time weekly wage for women on some of these issues, I think we can see that often the reasons that those happen are explained away around the idea that women are producing children and raising children, and that's why these things happen. So this kind of bodily function of women is given as the reason. And I think that is important to recognise, but it's not the whole answer to the question. There are many women who don't, for whatever reason, through choice or through health reasons, do not have children. And those women are also being blocked. It's not just because we are giving birth. It's also that we are expected to be the primary carers. We're carrying the main unpaid roles of carers in most of our communities. And that we're also doing the unpaid labour. So this is a great statistic. 64.4% of the total work day for women, as opposed to 36.1% of the total work day for men, is spent performing unpaid care work. Quite a nice little statistic. The glass ceiling, it's something I know that Janice had spoken about on many occasions, and I think when women's place in dance is looked at as a whole, it's often something that comes up. And there's going to be some statistics behind me which came out through the Turning Point report, which was last year, I think. Things like none of the 5 major Australian dance companies are run by a woman. However, 59% of the works programmed by 4-year funded companies were by women, as opposed to 41% by men. So on paper that looks great, the equality is great. There's going to be another statistic later. There it is, 70%. That's the percentage of the dance sector that are women. 70%. 70% with vaginas. And it's important to say it because when we're looking at equality, and we get very excited when we get towards 50-50, we are 70% of the sector. So there should be these opportunities coming through. There should be things where, the idea that 2 out of 4 people in a mixed bill are going to be women, well, more likely 3 out of 4. Sometimes all 4 might be women. And it's not necessarily a women's program. It's just because statistically there are more of us. So I want to talk a little bit about this notion of leadership and the notion of the ceiling that is there. There was a thing that came out of the Turning Point report which talked about who's blocking and also why it might be that particular companies or particular structures and organisations seem to be better at providing opportunities for women. And there was a look across the whole thing through early training, when, because there are a smaller number of men, they tend to be privileged within the opportunities that are there, through the stages of emerging, where young men tend to be better at putting themselves forward for opportunities, through to what we call establishing into ageing. And that through these latter stages, It seems to be that men are coming through more easily than women. And that perhaps this is to do with the way our structures are, our systems, our organisations. That in certain sectors, we're better at making space for women, we're better at honouring the way women work, and we're better at making accommodations or valuing the way that women want to create artwork. And so this gender gap that has been created is often because we're trying to fit round things into square holes and vice versa. Not to say that all women are the same or that all men are the same. And I think that notion of intersectionality, which I think we forget at our peril, is really important. Because this invisibility that older women feel, and there's going to be some more things behind my head about that, is something that if you are also black, gay, with disability, etc., you are going to feel even more so. It is compounded. And as we get older and we perhaps don't fulfill the gender expectation, we are women, we are no longer perhaps having or caring for children. There's this terrible moment when we sort of like give up, theoretically, our value as women. We have the menopause. We sort of like, that's it, you stopped, you finished, forget it, that's it, time out, you're not even a woman anymore. And so this idea of how do we move past that to something different, how do we allow that to be visible, how do we value that, so that you don't have to live in a particular way, that you can be the person that you are and be everything that you need to bring with that. Thank you, Daphne. And I think the other thing that I wanted to say was something that was in one of the quotes that Janice said, which was about the importance of, she was quoting a particular director that had given her a hand up, and I think what Liz said speaks to this, the way Janice would make time to give other people a hand up, to help other people come through. It's in who we champion, we as men and women, who we champion to come through, the support that we give to other people, the spaces that we make, you know. So I was very happy to take this opportunity to speak because having been in the UK for some time and now here, I did feel it was a good space to talk about in terms of Janice's legacy. But I also think in the future, if I'm asked to talk at something like this, I should say no, and I should suggest someone else. You know, I should suggest someone else and bring that person up and allow that person to come through. I've had my moment to do this, and someone else should. I was at a talk the other evening, and we were looking at a very distinguished set of speakers, and there was a real conversation about the bamboo ceiling. And yet the list of people who've given that talk over however many years, there was, I think, 2 Asian people and only 1 woman out of like 15 or 16 people talking each year for this particular opportunity. So I think that's important as well. And we should allow our elders to speak. We should allow our elders space so that they can talk and we can listen to them. We should make spaces for those people, because whilst it's very exciting to have the bright young things come through, the brightest, most exciting stuff is often coming from our elders. They have experienced things. They have bodily knowledge. They have tried the thing before and decided that they will go in a new direction. They have nothing to lose. Getting old is not for pussies. Thank you.